Oh, it's over here. All right, if I could get everyone's attention. I'd like to welcome everyone and good afternoon. Oh, you can't hear me? Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to our luncheon, our first luncheon of 2018, and actually the first luncheon where we are filling up this room and actually having to broadcast this into our other conference room. So I'd say that's actually quite an achievement for Cornerstone, but also I think it speaks to our who we have speaking at our luncheon today. I know everyone's here and excited to hear from Nevin, a well-known economist and real estate analyst, and excited to hear him. Because of the large group today, we're actually going to pass over going around and giving everyone a chance to introduce themselves, but I certainly hope that you had a chance to meet some new friends and faces, but also that if you want, you're welcome to stay afterwards and continue to mingle and network. There's no reason to rush out of here. So today we actually are going to have Fabian give our investor insight. He's going to talk a little bit, and afterwards we'll turn the time over to Alan. So Fabian?
Yeah. All right, let's see. I hope this works. Good afternoon. Just wanted to share a little experience. When my wife was pregnant for the first time, my mother-in-law said that she was either going to have a boy or twins. And so later that day, my wife and I were talking, and she said, "What are we going to do if we have twins?" And I said, "Don't worry. I can pretty much guarantee you we're not going to have twins." Well, not only do we have twins, but we have twin boys. So my mother-in-law was right. Thank you. Well, that was 14 years ago. And so this gives you a little bit of an idea of how accurate my predictions and my guarantees are. Yeah, right. So luckily, investments are easier, right? It's easier to predict when it comes to the investment world. BlackRock is the biggest investment manager in the world. They manage nearly $6 trillion. That's several thousand billions. It's just astronomical to think about those numbers. They come out with forecasts every year. And we were looking at their 5-year forecast. So for these asset classes, they're predicting what the annualized return would be. And they don't discount it for fees or for inflation. So the average investor would have a lower return than what they're predicting. So cash, what do you think? What are they predicting the annualized return? What was that? 0.02. 0.02. They're actually a lot more optimistic. They're saying 1.9 for the next 5 years. What about fixed income? Anyone want to take a guess? 3? 1? Oh, that didn't come through. 1.8. So at a quick look, that makes it appear like you're better off putting your money in cash than in bonds. I assume that's because they expect interest rates to go up, and therefore, even though these bonds are paying a yield, their value would go down. But if you hold on to them until maturity, you should have a better return than just 1.8%. Equities? Okay. Well, it didn't. I do. If I remember right, equities was at about 4%. So yeah, 3.9 sounds right. Thank you, Ron.
Each line is 2%.
Yes, that's accurate. So about 3.9%. That sounds right. Hedge funds was at 3.4 if I remember right. And commodities was just a little bit more than hedge funds. Real estate had the highest return at 5.9, if I remember right. No, that can't be 5.9. So about 4.5 and then private equity was at 4.7. So what did we learn from that? I guess that especially stocks, we don't expect, and most analysts don't expect the same returns we've seen in the last few years. They also add the volatility to these asset classes. So let me just see if that works. Yes, that works. So volatility measures how much of a fluctuation can you expect in these asset classes to happen. So cash, you don't expect volatility. That's why it's 0. With fixed income, they expect 3.3% volatility. So that means the 1.8% could be 3.3% higher. Could also be 3.3% lower. So you could be down 1.5%. You could be up, what's that, 5.1%. So it's that range you're looking at over the 5 years. Equity, no surprise, has a high volatility of 15.6%. So it could be much higher, it could be much lower. And I'll just jump through. No surprise, private equity has the highest volatility on the board. What's interesting is that real estate has a slightly lower volatility than equities, but a higher return expectation. That's one of the reasons why we still think real estate is a good place to be and should be in everybody's portfolio. This real estate prediction is based on U.S. core real estate. So that's the more stable properties where we don't expect high returns, but we typically expect pretty stable returns. PIMCO, another large investment manager, predicted for private real estate, it's more in the 7% range over the next 5 years, annualized. So we still like real estate. There was also a research project that was done just a few months ago where they 230 of the biggest pension plans in the nation. Combined, they manage $2.8 trillion. This is what is often referred to as the smart money, sophisticated investors. And they asked them, what do you expect to make in these different asset classes over the next few years? Here's what they predict. Numbers are back. Okay, perfect. Some of these, they predict more than double what BlackRock predicted. And I looked at other predictions. Most of the predictions are pretty much in line with BlackRock. So why are these pension fund managers so much more optimistic than other predictions? What do you think? Why is that? What was that? Unfunded liabilities? That's right. You guys are smart. I was thinking about it, and I thought my first theory was, well, because they have so much money, they have access to exclusive deals that the rest of us may not be able to access, and that's why they expect higher returns. But you're right. It's let me read this. This is in the Wall Street Journal from just last week, and they were referring to these forecasts from the pension funds. They said, why do expectations among pension plans run so high? Because they have to. The chief investment officer of a large public pension plan tells me, state laws guarantee generous retirement benefits for millions of current and former government employees. To appear as if they can meet those obligations, pension plans have no choice but to set their expected returns higher than reality is likely to deliver. Interesting. So there's a lot of noise out there when you're trying to predict what's going to happen in the market. And most of us don't have the knowledge and the experience that Alan Nevin has. And so it can get difficult to make sense of the noise. If you look at a study like this, you may think, oh, we're in for some pretty high returns for the next few years. If you look at the broader markets, those would disagree with that forecast. And just want to end of the Wall Street Journal. Said you can learn a lot from these folks, referring to these pension plan managers, if you listen to them and then do the opposite. So with that, I'll turn the time over to...
That doesn't augur well for me.
So here you go.
Thank you very much. Let me hello to everybody in this room and next room. First, I want to tell you that Cornerstone very generously has acquired a book for each one of you, and get a chance to, I have bits and pieces that I'll be showing you. Read. It talks about the future of America the next 25 years, and also the world in general. And so far so good. It's been out almost a year now, so I'm still hoping my trends that I show are accurate. Oh, there I am. Come on. Okay. First of all, I'd like to start out by, there we go, talking about this year. We're here already. Our GDP will grow by 3.5% to 4%. Let me tell you what that means. Okay. Every major recovery we've had going back to the 80s, the recoveries have all been in the 5 to 6% a year growth range. This time around, it's at 3.7%. GDP is made up of two factors. One is the production of goods and services in the United States, and the second is inflation. These big numbers were created because we had large inflation. This time around, our inflation is negligible. It doesn't mean that we're not doing well. It's just we're doing fine with production of goods and services. It's just that our inflation rate is low. So when you start to talk about our low GDP, there's a reason for it, and there's nothing wrong with it. Interest rates will remain stable. Going to go up slightly. When Janet Yellen leaves, the chap Powell, who just came in today or will be coming in fairly soon, we don't know what he's thinking. Okay, so what you really want to do is keep your eye on the 10-year T-bill, because that sets a 30-year mortgage. And that's really obviously what makes the housing market swing. As an aside, in a completely non-political statement, I will tell you that every morning when President Trump wakes up, he thinks about one thing and one thing only. How can I make my real estate investments more valuable? Okay? And to do that, he knows he's got to keep interest rates down, he's got to keep the economy healthy, and he can't bomb North Korea. If he carry out those three things, then you will see what is in essence a very stable, positive economy during his administration, though it may only be one administration. This doesn't like me.
I think actually if you point towards the back, it's the computer actually back.
Okay, let's turn to the back. Hey, fuel, thank you. Fuel prices will remain stable. They're about $60 now. I think they're probably going to edge down towards $50, but as opposed to 10 years ago, they won't be $150 a barrel. So sweet crude will be below 60, and that means our gas prices will be stable. We're still $1 a gallon higher in California than anywhere else in America, but that's California. Whoop. Back here. There we go. We will add 2.5 million people again, and that's great. We have, give or take, 330 million people in this country, and we traditionally go by 2.5, 3 million people, and that's what drives our economy. You've got to keep adding people because we're a consumer economy. The remarkable thing is that half of the total population growth in this country is taking place in California, Texas, and Florida. And that's somewhat astounding when you just think 3 out of 50 hogs about half of the growth Now, the book is basically about the Great Divide, the winners and losers. There are 15 states that are in gold. These are the winners. This is Albania. Okay? Nothing happens in these states, nor will it, because they are uniformly suffering an out-migration of their educated youngsters. And you can't maintain a positive growth environment when your college-educated millennials are abandoning for the gold states, which they are. From 1980 to 2010, 3/4 of the entire population gain in this nation was in those 15 states. When they do the 2020 census in a couple of years, it'll show the same thing. Won't be any change. Also this year, we will continue to gain more than 2 million a year jobs. And that's wonderful. And that's been a continuum. And they're not all at McDonald's. The mix of jobs remains fairly constant. So the job mix is good. The unemployment rate will remain at 4%. And 38 to 40% of all the new jobs will be in California, Texas, and Florida. It was 2/3 last year. Now, job openings. In 2010, there were 3 million. Now there's 6 million openings. And as you continually read, our employers are desperate for employees. Very, very difficult to find. Unemployment insurance claims, every week Bureau of Labor Statistics put out this number, and it's been at that level now for 2 or 3 years, which is good. It's a very good level. Come back to inflation. Inflation, here we go. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has created a new CPI measurement, a new inflation measurement. It's called chain CPI. It's going to come out 4 times a year, and they swear it's more accurate. But basically, it's basically saying inflation is at 2%. That 2% does not relate to housing prices in California. Okay? When you look at the formula for computing inflation, it's a national figure based on about 40% of it is rent. It has no sale housing component in it. And for most of the United States, rents are stable. So that's why you get a very low inflation rate. Corporate profits are going to go up thanks to the new Tax Act. We may get some more money coming back from overseas. There's, I think, a one-time 15% break on that coming back, and that's terrific. And as Fabian pointed out, a rising stock market may partially bail out the public pension funds because they desperately need to be bailed out. Military spending is getting a big boost. The latest budget is just terrific. And there are basically 4 or 5 states that grab it all. We're number 1. Virginia's number 2. I think Georgia may be number 3. But the basic point is we're the big hogs when it comes to military spending. And that's terrific for us. Unfortunately, healthcare costs remain at 17% of our gross domestic product, compared to virtually 10% in every other industrialized country. And that is hurting us. We actually would be growing economically a lot faster if we could drive down these healthcare costs. And nobody at the federal level is really willing to bite the bullet on what has to be done. And there's a whole myriad of things they could do to drive it down, but it's really eating us alive. And that $20 trillion debt, when you see how that has evolved, a big chunk of it has to do with health care and Obamacare. Real estate. This year, we're going to produce more housing units than we did in any year since 2006. So that's really pretty neat. We're going to do 1.2 to 1.3 Resale homes are going to be terrific all across the country. Foreclosures are almost a forgotten thing. We don't talk about them anymore. Non-residential construction is going to reach a new high. It's going to double that of 2010. This is going to be a great year for non-residential construction, mainly because of the budgets that have been allocated for infrastructure in the military. And we certainly need it, but it's going to be there this year. That's really pretty good. Come back, one. Okay, now, here we go. I want to bring up the issue of housing prices. What you find in this nation is that housing prices relate to people's ability to afford housing. And it's just that way. So when you look at the crazy prices that you see, particularly in Silicon Valley, those prices wouldn't be there unless people had the incomes to buy the homes. And they do. So you look at the other markets where housing is cheap. Detroit, honest to God, median home price for sale last month, $45,000. You can buy a perfectly decent home in the city of Detroit. Question is, why would you go there? And the answer is, I mean, not only they're horrible, but they don't have the jobs. So jobs drive the home prices. They also drive the rent levels. So you see these crazy rent levels, but if you move to Peoria, you can live really cheap. You can go to Alabama, where minimum wage is still $5.75, and you can rent a really nice apartment there for $700. I don't know what you do there, but the reality is that if you want to live cheap in this country, there are about 40 states where you can really live cheap. But do you want to leave California? And the answer is most people don't. Getting back to Fabian and the pension funds. It's really an amazing story what's happening. The black states that are slowly dying are not able to contribute to the public pension funds. New Jersey, their public pension funds are only funded at 31%. Imagine if you just spent 30 years working for the state of New Jersey and there's nothing in the till. 36%. The West Coast, we're in the 70, 85 range. We're doing okay. When you look at the 15 states that are the growth states, they average 74% funding, whereas I would call the big five hubcap states, Michigan and Indiana and Western Pennsylvania and the others, they're only at 57%. And if they want to lie to themselves and say the stock market is continue to going up at 10% a year or 15%, they can lie all they want to, but it ain't going to happen. And they will continue to be underfunded, and that is going to be a disaster because they're going to be forced to put more and more of their revenues into the pension funds for their retired employees, and that money comes from infrastructure, education systems, and the other things that we rely on government for. So it's a very, very difficult situation, and I don't know what they can do about it. Now let's talk about employment. Very simple set of numbers out there. Every time you add one new job that's an economic driver, you automatically add 2 support jobs. Now, a basic job is one that comes from outside the area, the money comes from outside the area, and the support jobs are your jobs at Vons and the usual. Okay, most metropolitan areas have 2, maybe 3 sources of basic jobs. We here in San Diego have 8 sources. We are incredibly blessed. Needless to say, the military still rules the roost with about 25% of our economy. and that has been incredibly stable, and it is actually getting better. But we have, manufacturing and tourism and import-export and high-tech. University system is a great basic employer, and our schools are really growing. UCSD is adding another 5,000 students. San Diego State will. As soon as they take over Qualcomm, they'll be able to build more dorm space and get more students in there. Cal State San Marcos is up to 13,000 students now. So the university system's a marvelous basic employer. So we're doing great with our basic jobs. And of course, not to pick on Detroit, but Detroit's lost 350,000 basic jobs in the last quarter century. There's nothing they can do about it, because all the automobile plants have moved to the southeast United States. They're in South Carolina and Alabama and Georgia, and they're just doing great. And even Boeing in Seattle, 4 years ago, picked up one whole line of 737s and moved 10,000 people to Charleston, South Carolina, a right-to-work state, where they were being crippled in Washington with the union. So let me go ahead back and talk about the San Diego market. We're going to add another 30,000 people. We'll be up to 3.3 million by the end of this year, which is pretty neat. Employment, we're going to add another 20,000 jobs, maybe 22,000. Unemployment rate, 4%. That's a civilian unemployment rate. If you plug back in the 115,000 military, you wind up with an unemployment rate significantly less than that. We're going to build 10,000 housing units this year. We're going to have a bonanza. And the great news is that a big part of those are going to be single family. This is the first time since 2006 that we have what we call shovel-ready lots. We ran out of lots in 2006. Then we go into a recession, and the equity that usually comes in and resuscitates our lot supply to get ready for the next boom wasn't there, because Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and all the other firms that normally kick in the equity were not there this time. So it's taken us this long to rebuild our lot supply. If you go down to Otay Ranch in Chula Vista now, there are 35 new for sale projects down there, and they're selling like crazy. They're doing very, very well down there. And there's a whole new group of them up on the 78, somewhere between San Marcos and Escondido. So we're going to be doing very well with sale housing this year, which is terrific. Apartment construction is going to slow down. We have a few too many coming online. We have about a 5-year supply coming online in 2018. And it's going to be not going to be pretty. And non-residential construction, it'll be our highest year ever. And that's terrific. Incidentally, almost half of the non-residential construction is alterations and renovations, not new construction, because we have so much old product here, old office buildings, old industrial, and we're revitalizing them and changing use and adding value, and that's a very good thing for us. McKinsey & Company, about 3 months ago, came out with an analysis of the future economic growth of this nation in terms of jobs. And they broke all the jobs into 2 categories: algorithmic and heuristic. Algorithmic jobs are jobs where you do the same thing every day. Cashiers, name them all, where you just go to work every day and it's a repeat of yesterday. Heuristic jobs, and I don't know why they chose those names, but heuristic jobs are jobs where you actually have to think. You do something different every day. And rather obviously, the future in this country is heuristic jobs. And all you have to do is look at the 15 states that are in gold. They're the ones that are hogging virtually all the heuristic jobs. Now, there are a few metropolitan areas up north, like obviously New York, Boston, Chicago, that have a lot of heuristic jobs, but those are few and far between. So when you look at the heuristic jobs around the country, what you're really seeing is jobs that are aimed at the millennial market, people 18 to 34 years of age, and they drive the economy because they're the ones that purchase homes for the first time, Home Depot every weekend. They purchase cars, but 10 years ago, the average car sold in this country was $22,000. Last year it was $37,000. Why? Because all the millennials who were driving Toyota Corollas now are driving SUVs. And when you look at the sales this last year in particular, there's been an enormous burst of SUV sales, and it also, those happen to be very, very profitable. So you look at the profits of the car companies, they did very well. Now, that's Barbie, okay? She's 50 years old now. She's no longer a millennial. So when we look at the millennials in this country, we see we have this enormous growth pattern of millennials that's coming down the path. So when I look at the next decade, I drool because our consumer economy is just gonna be dynamite as these millennials take advantage of all the good things that America is about. And what has happened is that the millennials have opted to get married later. 25 years ago, millennials were getting married at age 22. Now they're getting married at age 28. And that age period there allowed them to finish their college, get a good job, save some money, and find the right person to get married to. And eventually they get married at age 28. But that has actually set back the economy 5 or 6 years. But now they're getting there. We here in San Diego have the highest percent of millennials of any metropolitan area in the United States. And 7 of the 10 highest millennial are all in the gold states. Chicago, Philly, and New York have their obvious attractions for millennials, and they're doing a great job of getting them. Now, where do millennials live? This is the amazing story. In 1975, 57% of millennials were married. Half that now, 27%. And that explains the swing from getting married at age 22 to age 28. We have now 31% of millennials still live with their parents. In California, it's 40%, which is absolutely an incredible statistic. So what it is the high cost of living. So in the high cost states, you have 40% still living with their parents. In the low cost states, it's not that they hate their parents and want to get out of their house. It's really cheap. So youngsters can get out of the house easy, and they do. So this is a permanent situation. I don't see that changing at all. I mean, you know, you can seal off the second floor of your house, but they'll still come back. All 3 of my kids own a home, so I'm feeling good about that. Now here in San Diego, we have the Henrys, high earnings, not rich yet. And that's what's driving this economy, because the millennials are starting to get married. And they get married to people who are equally intelligent and equally educated. So you wind up with an enormous number of people, and this is the entire West Coast, households earning 200 to 300 grand a year and sometimes higher, because doctors tend to marry doctors and lawyers tend to marry lawyers. It just happens that way. And the result of that is we have a very affluent group of millennials, and they're the ones that can afford the kind of houses that we have. And if you can go down to Otay and buy a really beautiful 2,000 square foot townhouse for like 400 grand, which you can, a couple that's earning a couple hundred grand a year can buy one and pay it off in 2 or 3 years. So the Henrys are really what the West Coast is all about. And then finally, this is really the key to my long-term optimism. In the next quarter century, there's going to be $40 trillion of inheritance documented. We know just from demographics that there are a group of us that are not going to be around in 25 years, and it's all going to our kids and our grandkids. Just a personal note, I can tell you my 2 oldest grandchildren are both heirs because their mother's father died and left them a whole bunch of real estate in Florida, and they don't have to work the rest of their lives. Now they will, because that's in their DNA. But I'm just telling you, these millions and actually trillions of dollars are starting to funnel down now. If you look at the insurance, life insurance in force, $20 trillion of life insurance. And if you go on the website of American Council of Life Insurers, you can see how that's starting to be paid out now in big numbers. We know that seniors, 80% of seniors own their own home, virtually all debt-free, passes down from generation to generation, and that's going to be spent. You know, they're not going to stick it in a tree somewhere. That money is going into consumer spending for good things, for housing particularly, and for education. And therefore, we really have a very positive time ahead of us here in the nation. And I'm delighted to answer questions. Thank you. Only easy ones.
Based on this situation, what should we do about our own cars? Should we get convertibles and put potted plants in them because we won't be able to drive them anymore?
Oh,
California?
well, the slightly overstated, okay? You know, for 25 years, we've been peddling alternative energy cars. In California, we're now approaching 2%, okay? And I will tell you that 40% of the people who buy Priuses, when they trade them in for a traditional combustion engine car.
Can you repeat the question? Because the other room couldn't hear the question.
Oh.
No, they can hear you, but they couldn't hear the question. If you could just repeat
Oh,
the question.
thank you. Okay. Last question is, are cars obsolete because we're going to be all self-driving? And I feel that most of the people in California that I see on the freeway are already have self-driving cars because they're not paying attention to where they're driving. But the answer is, that's a long, long way away. One of the things that I do encourage, however, is for big trucks to go electric. And when I see what Tesla's doing and Walmart committing to buy hundreds of these big semis that are electric and can go 300 or 400 miles without recharging, I think that is dynamite, because the trucks are the predominant polluter, not today's cars. So, thank you.
How do you think today's propensity not to go to the store, to get everything delivered to your house, to work from home, is going to affect the economy in the near future?
Okay, the question is, web-based purchases, how do they affect the economy? The answer is, well, there's several parts to the answer. Number one is shopping centers are becoming service centers, not retail centers. When you go to a UTC and you count the stores, you see that a larger and larger percent are selling services that you can't buy on the web. So, you know, whether getting your nails done or your hair done, other services. The other part of it is that shopping has been becoming a recreational activity. So people still go to the stores and will continue to buy. The losers will be obsolete shopping centers that have obsolete stores like Kmart. And, you know, there have been dozens of major chains that have folded in the last 10, 15 years. Mervyn's and a whole Circuit City also. So the answer is right now we're at about 15% of our retail purchases are online. And they tend to be very heavily concentrated into apparel and books and recordings. But for the big centers that have the right mix of retailers, they're going to be around a long time. And you can see what Westfield just put into UTC. They've done an incredible job of rebuilding that center, whereas Horton Plaza was the wrong center. It was the right center in 1985, but now it's going to be leveled because it just doesn't work anymore. It started out with 4 department stores. Now they're down to 1. And so retailing is changing. Let me tell you the other thing that's come about that I find just sort of neat. 15% of all goods that are sold on the web are returned. And now there's another incredible industry popping up that sells these goods because Amazon doesn't want these damn things back. They're not going to restock them. They take everything that comes back and ships them off to another business that will resell them on the web for still further discounts. So it really creates, when they talk about Amazon killing off small business, more than 50% of Amazon's sales come from independent suppliers of goods, not from Amazon. So they have been an incredible bonanza for small business. Please.
Yes, I'm curious how the increase in the ordinary income tax rate in California and other high tax states in the gold zone might affect the trends you're talking about with
the question is the new tax act. And the tax act was sort of predictable. It was a reward to all of Trump's rich friends. And secondarily, it was thumbing your nose at California, New York, and New Jersey. And my answer is that it'll have virtually no effect on anything in California. Just none. It's just an idea, but we'll find out in a year or two. Okay. Yes?
That you weren't optimistic about health care. You said there were several things that could be done, but you're not optimistic about anything happening. Why is that?
Well, the answer is that it has. Okay, thank you. What about health care, the 17%? And the answer is it takes a massive concerted effort by Congress to change the situation, and the appetite is not there. Certainly not there with the Republicans, and until maybe when the Democrats regain, particularly the Senate, something will happen. But it's not just one thing. It's a myriad of different things that have to happen to change our health care. I guess you probably read that the clinics in Tijuana are doing a land office business now from our folks going across, and they can do things for somewhere between a half and 1/3 the cost here. And I can tell you there's nothing wrong with the medical treatment over there either. And it's been particularly good for dental and facials. little help. So I will tell you that our country has no better health statistics than any other industrialized country. We have you go through the checklist, we're no better. Just because we're almost twice as expensive doesn't mean we're getting twice as good health care. That's another whole day's, maybe another whole decade's seminar. Yeah.
I noticed on your GDP bar chart that went back about 30 years that except for the time period between 2008 and 2016, the GDP averaged between 5 and 6–7%.
Right.
You're projecting beyond 2016, it's going to be 3–4% for now. Is there any reason for that period between 2008 and 2016 other than an anti-business administration being enforced?
Well, it was just the fact that we were in a severe recession. And the reality is there wasn't much President Obama could do about it. I frankly don't know what he could have. Well, I take it back. He could have resuscitated the housing market. Every president knows that when you want to get out of a recession, the first thing you do is throw money at home builders, and Obama didn't. But we could have come out of this a lot faster.
If he had done some of the things Trump is doing now, it might have not been 1.9%.
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah, you're right. Any other questions?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned Otay and Chula were having a lot of housing starts in residential housing.
Yes.
What other areas are you seeing that have a lot of starts and growth?
Well, in San Diego.
Well, we're really just talking about Otay and the 78 corridor. There's no land left anywhere else. So that's really where you're going to see. Now, Otay still has room for another 15,000 housing units. So it's not like we're going to run out tomorrow. But now the money is there to continually improve the land. They have 1, 2, 3 more villages that can hold about another 15,000 homes. So it's happening. Now the only bad news is that all the jobs are in North County. So the traffic, imagine this, take another 10,000 housing units in Otay at 1.5 cars per household and put them on the 125 in the morning going, or the 805 heading up to UTC and Carmel Valley. It's going to be incredible. But I guess we'll live with it because we don't have mass transit. Any event. Yeah.
With Trump focusing on keeping interest rates low, unemployment stays low, but at the same time, there's lots of jobs out there available. I mean, any concerns about inflation?
No.
I mean, any concerns about real inflation out there?
No.
It's a fairly simple formula. It's rental housing, cost of food, cost of everyday consumer goods, and cost of oil. And that's the core CPI. And I just don't see much. One of the things that it's somewhat misleading in the CPI, and I don't know how they can ever battle this, relates to product improvement. In other words, if you go to Costco, the 70-inch screen that you can buy today, for a grand, 10 years ago, that would have gotten you a 22-inch screen. So we've had a remarkable increase in quality in the nation, but the quality isn't taken into account into the CPI. It may never be. Is that it? Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could talk more about all the apartments coming online, like the new product, because I'm just curious because it seems like the millennials, I mean, in addition to buying homes, also are entering the search for apartments.
Yeah, no,
like quality locations. So
about
Because we haven't built any condominiums downtown in 10 years or so, we had a lot of land sitting down there, and all the national apartment builders gobbled it up, and they all broke ground simultaneously. So we have this enormous number of units coming on downtown. Typical one bedroom is 2,500, two bedrooms are 3,000 to 3,200 a month. And the millennials won't live there for long before they decide it's time to buy an Otay. And you will see, and you are seeing, by the way, a large turnover in these newer projects as the millennials decide it's time to buy a home. And it will be very difficult to keep these apartment projects rented through time. And yet more and more are coming in. You know, with apartments, you look downtown, you have Graystar built a lovely building right next to Petco that opens next month. 730 units, all available on day one. I mean, they don't make them available by floor. It's when the building gets its certificate of occupancy. So you've got 730 there, 300 with Alliance. Trammell Crow has got another 100 there. I have in my database 40 projects that are in the pipeline, apartment projects, vertical, that will come online. And they're obligated to build. These are the big nationals. These are Trammell Crow and Alliance and Streetlights and the rest of them. And it's going to be nasty down there. So that's...
nasty in terms of prices or congestion?
No. Nasty in terms of economics. There's going to be major concessions.
They'll be empty.
They won't fill up anywhere near as fast as their projections.
So they're going to sell lower?
The rents will go down.
Oh, the rentals,
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible for some of these community or some of these apartment buildings to retrofit into a senior community? So a lot of seniors like living where they just can walk wherever.
Yeah, that's obviously a
Idea, but the numbers don't work.
So they can't.
They really can't. I mean, they are in essence open to seniors right now.
Right, but they don't have. They're not senior community. They don't have the dining rooms, the activity. You know what I mean? Independent living.
Yeah. No, there's none of those being built right now. We're, for a community that really should be of phenomenal attraction to the retiree market, our prices are such that we can't make it happen. Frankly, Rancho Bernardo is the best bargain in the entire county. They're still giving away homes here. I watch the market up here and I'm saying, why are homes so cheap in Rancho Bernardo? I don't understand it. I think it's a great environment, not only for retirees, you're part of the Poway school system, which is really good. And yet the prices, when you look at the prices here, they have not escalated in the other communities north of 8. I don't know why. Scott? Oh, there's one more? Go ahead.
You talked about how housing prices were high and rental prices were high and places where incomes were high. You ended though with inheritance being, big, and so I think like San Diego always shows up like worst in affordability. And in part, my view is that it's not just incomes because they use income versus rent, but it's because we have money coming from somewhere else buying up the homes and driving up the price, and that doesn't show up in the income line. Mm-hmm. So through inheritance or international immigration or whatever, money could come from somewhere else and drive up home prices or rent prices in an area. Do you think that's a bigger issue?
is a relatively
insignificant number of our homes priced under $1 million go for second homes from people coming in from other places. It's a very small number. Now, in the La Joillas and the Ranchos, just not. I mean, we're too expensive a place for most retirees unless they have megabucks. Yes?
A lot of the apartment construction, I think, is because they didn't want to condoize it because of its construction defects. And after 10 years, they're going to want to sell them, I think. What's going to happen when that?
Well, I hope that happens. It's really sort of interesting. We've had absolutely no interest by converters. They basically all left town. They're still doing it on the East Coast, but here we have not done it.
You're saying,
Well, they may 10 years out.
that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying they could very easily.
So
They're all putting maps on them. They're all putting, final.
So that would be a glut on the market, wouldn't it?
Well, it depends how many. Right, I mean, right now, we are desperate for moderate price condominiums downtown. I can't get a client to break ground on one. Now, last time around, it was all Canadians. And other than Boso at the very top end, I look at all the rest of our clients, Intra-Gulf, Intra-West, regions ad nauseum, they won't pull the trigger downtown. They're afraid.
On condos. But they will do apartments?
Like Mike Dakota's Pinnacle is building those 2 monster towers downtown right now, and he's got 2 more going. But he won't build a condominium.
All right, well, let's give Alan another round of applause.
Scott? Thank you, sir. Thank you. You know, I have a nice collection of these at home.
Just got to be careful about who's listening.
Yeah. Good. Thank you all.
Yes, and so as Alan mentioned, we have books for everyone. Please grab one on your way out. I also wanted to mention, just from a catering standpoint, we have our next roundtable next month, February 21st. That's Wednesday. We have a group coming out to speak on cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. It's got quite a few headlines recently, so we're going to have a group come out, talk about, help educate you on it, as well as talk about what are the investment opportunities out there. To me, it feels a little bit back like 99 again, and doesn't make sense. What is cryptocurrency really built upon? And so these guys will come out and talk about that. So I encourage you to come and attend that. And then also, ladies only, we have our Valentine's luncheon on February 14th. So know, and we'll get you on the list. But it's a great event that Ashley and the ladies here in the office put on. So we'd love to have you attend. But again, ladies only. But again, thanks for coming out, and hope you guys have a great day.